Welcome to this explainer. We're doing something a little bit different today, and honestly, it is incredibly fascinating. We are going to look at our source material through a totally unique lens. Imagine we've intercepted a transmission from the year 3050. This message is looking backward at our current era to reveal humanity's greatest cognitive traps, our near misses with disaster, and how we ultimately survived. It's a profound dive into how we actually think, how our assumptions form, and how true wisdom develops over time. Okay, let's jump right into this transmission. It completely shifts our perspective, doesn't it? Instead of getting caught up in the daily anxieties and the endless noise of today, we get to take this thousand-year step back. The chief engineer of 3050 is analyzing our civilization's status, figuring out exactly how humanity learned to clear the fog and avoid catastrophic mistakes.
Section 1. Most Dangerous Words. The Age of Assumptions. The future pinpoints this era as the absolute root of history's greatest blunders.
Out of all the words, all the rhetoric, and all the wild ideologies in human history, the future considers these four simple words to be the most dangerous ever spoken. I already know. Why? Well, because certainty literally shuts down learning. The second you say, I already know, you're slamming the door on curiosity. And, as this transmission makes crystal clear, curiosity isn't just a nice-to-have trait, it's our primary survival mechanism.
So, the real kicker here is that our biggest vulnerability as a species actually isn't a lack of intelligence. Not at all. It's our overwhelming human tendency to act on our beliefs before we verify the reality. Look, ignorance is totally fine. Ignorance is just a starting point. It can be cured by learning. But unquestioned assumptions, when we are 100% certain without checking the facts, that is exactly what causes collapses, wars, and absolute disasters.
Section 2. Fooling Civilizations. Deception Architecture. Let's look at how our individual blind spots scale up into massive, society-wide vulnerabilities.
Entire societies can be completely misled without anyone ever technically telling a blatant lie. Deception isn't always about making things up out of thin air, it's more of an architecture. It's built on lies of omission and stripping away vital context. It thrives on manufactured outrage, which, let's be honest, is basically a business model for emotional manipulation nowadays, and algorithmic attention warfare. This is exactly how echo chambers get built, where mere repetition is eventually mistaken for actual truth.
Section 3. Truth versus belief. Separating facts. So, how do we fight back against that? The chief engineer gives us a phenomenal framework.
In the future, they teach their kids to think by drawing a massive, uncrossable line between facts and conclusions. Here's how it works. A fact is something you can objectively observe, like, hey, a photograph exists, or this statistic exists. Simple, right? But an assumption or a conclusion is something we construct. It's saying, this photograph proves their secret intent, or this statistic totally explains the cause. Confusing the raw fact with the story you've built around it, well, that's exactly what leads us straight into the ditch.
To combat this, they came up with what they call the 30-50 rule, and it is brilliant. Increase confidence slowly, decrease confidence quickly when evidence changes. It sounds simple, but this rule became the absolute bedrock of civilizational survival, because at the end of the day, reality doesn't require our agreement. It just is.
Section 4. Smart people fail, brain design flaws. Now you might be wondering, why do really smart people and huge institutions still fall into these traps?
Well, the transmission spells out that our brains have some serious literal design flaws. Evolution optimized our brains for comfort, social survival, and fitting in with our group, not necessarily for finding objective truth. This creates what the future calls narrative lock. We get emotionally attached to a conclusion before we even look at the evidence. We mistake our own deep conviction for truth. And even worse, we confuse our emotional intensity, like how outraged we are or how popular an idea is, with actual proof. But emotional intensity is a terrible compass for reality.
Section 5. Verification Crisis 2028 to 2035. This brings us to a really scary, but absolutely pivotal bottleneck coming up in our near future.
This was the era where our tech completely outpaced our ability to figure out what's true. The whole problem shifted. It was no longer about a lack of information, it was a lack of trustworthy information. Think about it. The end of photographic certainty, the explosion of synthetic voices, deepfakes, and AI just vacuuming up and amplifying our own human biases. Seeing and hearing literally stopped being believing. This forced a massive sink-or-swim moment where humanity had to completely change how it consumed information.
Humanity has swapped out its tools thousands of times across the epochs of time. We went from cave paintings to the printing press to computers, all the way to AI systems and whatever the reality auditors of the 2030s are. But our biggest challenge? It was actually never the technology itself. Our greatest hurdle was learning how to distinguish reality from our own assumptions while using all these new tools.
Section 6. Surviving Society. Avoiding Extinction. Luckily, the transmission has some really good news for us here. We make it through.
So how exactly did we survive the bottleneck? By adopting 4 incredibly practical, actionable steps. Number 1, assume every single source is incomplete. Instead of blindly trusting, ask yourself, what are they leaving out? Number 2, follow the incentives. You have to look for the hidden motivations. Number 3 is huge. Seek adversarial evidence. Don't just look for stuff that proves you right. Actively search for the evidence that proves you wrong. And number 4, learn to confidently, enthusiastically say, I don't know, or there's insufficient evidence, instead of rushing to a false certainty.
And this brings us to a quote that I absolutely love. The future was not saved by those who were certain. It was saved by those who were willing to ask, one more time, what if we're wrong? That is the secret right there. Curiosity became our ultimate shield. The future wasn't secured because we found flawless leaders or perfect institutions. We survived because we made a habit of asking, what if we're wrong, and actually testing our claims against reality.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. What assumptions are we making today that future generations are going to look back on and think, wow, that was so obvious? How can we start trading our dangerous certainties for the protective power of curiosity, starting right now? Because remember, reality doesn't care if we agree with it, it just waits for us to encounter it. Thanks so much for joining me on this transmission. Keep questioning, keep verifying, and whatever you do, stay curious.